usages. And if you can give timelines to this so that the people of Ghana can hold you to it when the time comes.
Well, first and foremost, I don't think that I would suggest.
Honorable members, it is settled at the committee that he is even yet to take his position. As to whether he will be approved or not, he doesn't know. So I find it very strange asking him to give you timeline. So he can proceed to answer the question without necessarily relating to the timeline.
Chairman, I think you are leading the...
No.
They're nominated. But yes. He should be able to... Mr. Chairman, I beg to deplore that. Please.
Honorable members, order. Please proceed to answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think that if I'm approved by this committee, I think we need to do a comprehensive feasibility study to ascertain the socioeconomic impact of such a ban on the people of this country, and also take into consideration whether there are alternatives, and as to whether those alternatives are available and cheaper. I think that is what we need to look at. So if you ask me whether there should be a ban, I think it will be very difficult to answer that. What I can say is that in response to the question, the last aspect of your question, whether we should support Ghanaian domestic, businesses and investors to get into biodiversity. Exactly. I think that would be one thing that I may encourage. But to ban it outright, when we are not certain whether we have the capacity to produce the alternatives and how cheaper the alternative will be, and I think that would be a very difficulty to do. But one thing I can say is that to support our Ghanaian industries and businessmen to get into investment of such is something that I would encourage. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any further question?
Yes, I have a follow-up.
Very well.
Mr. Chairman.
On the plastic?
Yes,
very well.
On the plastic. Now, Mr. Nominee, have you realized that in this country, when people even buy a bottle of water, a plastic bag is given to them, and in most cases, once they take the bottle of water, they drop the plastic bag. I don't know whether you are aware. It is the reason why we have a lot of plastic waste in our country. And so if you are saying that when it comes to the importation, you consider it later. But what would be your policy on the use of plastics in this country? That you should be able to tell us that it should be something that we should ban in the country, the use of plastic in the country. Because there are other countries around the world that have either banned the use of plastic or they've made it so expensive that people want to reuse plastic when they buy it. Here it is so cheap that people are able to buy like 10 of them a day. And so, would you allow me, my brother?
But will you address the chair and proceed to ask the question?
Yes. So my question is whether, apart from the importation, you suggest to His Excellency the President to ban the use of plastics in the country.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like I answered earlier,
but I think you asked this question on the ban on the plastic bags, and he has provided the answer. You even tagged your question that will he provide a timeline for doing so. So,
Mr. Chairman, with respect, there were two aspects. One was importation. One was importation. And he answered that correctly. This one is the use. So
will he consider a ban?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Very well. Will you consider a ban on the use of plastic bags?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think in response to this, just like I responded to your earlier question, you don't just ban because there is a challenge. You need to be looking for alternatives. So if you don't have the alternative and you go ahead to ban, the consequences will be dire. So what I think I will do is that let's have a comprehensive, study on the issue and find out the alternative. How do we support our domestic industry to come out with, if you like, reusable containers, biodegradable packaging, and these are things that other countries have done. Rwanda Rwanda didn't just ban, they came out with some of those things to be able to stabilize the system before they went ahead to impose such bans. So I think that is what I would do.
Well, I recognize a follow-up question from the minority.
Okay, Chairman, thank you. My friend, Honorable Murtala, or should I address you as Dr. Murtala? Comrade Murtala. Congratulations in the first place. I find your answer to the plastic waste quite interesting, and I want to pry further. As you do know, the separation of waste is one fundamental need of our country now. I mean, in other jurisdictions, you find that even from the outset, the waste is separated, which helps in the management or disposal. What is your thinking going into the ministry? And I know this plastic waste is a huge concern, environmental effect of the environment and all that. Is it? And I heard your answer when you said that you have to get there to probably look at the stakes to be able to take a decision whether to ban or not to ban. But you are going to be, inshallah, by the grace of the Almighty, you are going to be our Minister for the Environment. I'm curious to know what your thinking is in the face of this challenge that plastic waste poses to the environment and the economy. What is your thinking? What should be the approach?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In other jurisdictions, the segregation starts at home and in the communities. That is not what we experience in our part of the country. What do we then need to do to ensure that there is some proper education and sensitization of domestic users and disposal of waste, such that within homes, if the state needs to intervene to provide the needed dustbins, more or less, liquid waste where you dump them, solid waste where you dump them, it all helps. And I think that is what I'll be looking at. If there is the possibility for the state to intervene, perhaps taking advantage of other, if you like, private entities who are interested in some of these things, then we have some education, some sensitization, so that people would be able to segregate liquid waste and solid waste. It helps even at the, the receiving point where the waste is even dumped. But when you mix them, it creates a lot of problems for sanitation and some of the disposal facilities. So that's what I would do.
Honourable Member, your last question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honourable nominee, when it comes to environmental pollution, we talk more about air and water. But there's another one which we seem to have forgotten, and that is noise pollution, which is generally caused by the traffic noise, air noise, construction sites, catering, and nightlife, and even especially religious bodies. Do you mind sharing in detail your specific plans to combat all these forms of pollution, but especially for today on noise pollution?
I think if we have, ministries and agencies are not supposed to be working in isolation. What I will do is to deepen the collaboration between ministries to ministry, agency to agency. If you look at noise, for example, you may see it entirely as a responsibility of MESTI. But to be able to have a policy that would regulate the noise that people engage in our communities, you cannot do that without engaging traditional authorities, without engaging local governance level. In this case, the Ministry of Local Government and Chief Sansi will be so much important in it. So I think what I will do is to have some consultation with some of these ministries and agencies and see how best we can all help to stem the tide. If you check the EPA law, it seems to me that there isn't any aspects of noise, if you like, pollution in it That is something I would want to take a second look at. If there can be some amendments just in the new law so that we can incorporate noise pollution into that act, and I think that is also something that will go a long way to help.
Thank you. I'll proceed to give the floor to
Mr. Chairman, with respect,
Honorable.
I have follow-up if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
Very well. The follow-up on the noise.
In answering the question, you mentioned the new law which is in the offing. I'm sure you've seen it. And so, are you able to share with us the specific provisions in the law which you believe can help with the noise pollution? Or if there are none, are you able to tell us the lacuna, what you think should be done regarding the new bill to be able to combat this noise pollution?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess when I was responding to your question, I said that is what seemed to be missing in the new law, the aspects of the noise pollution, and that is what I will be taking up.
I recognize Honorable Adolfo.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Comrade Murtala, congratulations. And you did not run away from Nanton for nothing. You came to Tamale and you are now a king there. Once again, congratulations. Honorable, I'm coming home. We know the ministry you are going plays a pivotal role in economic development in this country. I know your capabilities, but I want to find out from you, what are the main environmental issues confronting this country? Can you list some of these?
Well, you look, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Galamsey is one classical example. I mean, the environment is destroyed, and I must also add that, Mr. Chairman, the responsibility of protecting and ensuring that we sustain the environment is a religious one, maybe unknown to many people. If you read Genesis 2:15, there is ample statement that demonstrate that we must all do everything possible to protect the environment. And if you come and read the Quran chapter 2, verse 30 in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah himself admonished us. There are hadiths, and when I say hadiths, these were the sayings and the practices of the whole prophet, where he insisted that even in war, do not cut down trees. So there is some reasons why everybody, and I believe that in African traditional religions, they tell you that when the last tree is cut, the last man dies. If you read other religious groupings, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, you see that they all have aspects of the need to protect the environment. So if you ask me, I think that is one major challenge, and it encapsulates a lot of things, because they cut down trees, they destroy water bodies, they destroy livelihood, they destroy the habitat that lives in them. So if I say Galamsey, I think that it encapsulates a lot of aspects of the examples that I may be given as one of the things that affects our environment. Thank you.
Chairman, a follow-up. I'm happy you mentioned about cutting down trees. Can you tell us the percentage of forest cover about 50 years ago in Ghana?
Mr. Chairman, I will not be able to. What I can say is that I know that the World Bank financed a project undertaken by EP and the ministry to determine the destruction of water bodies and the forests. And the report was shocking. When they quantified it, it constituted about 10% of our GDP. So what I even intend to do is to take an audit of the environmental degradation that we have had in this country. Because if you have an audit that is done, then you have something, in hand that you can work with. But it seems to me that we are engaged in firefighting. You cannot specifically say this is the level of destruction of the activities of Galamsey and other human activities to our environment. So the first thing I intend to do is to see if we can have a national audit to be able to determine the percentage of the environment that is destroyed, taking into consideration the work that was funded to be done by the World Bank and EP and the MSC. So that's what I intend to do.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I still want to bring my brother down to that same... this is a follow-up, Chairman. I want to know, presently, if you have an idea, the percentage of forest cover in this country?
I don't have that in hand presently. I don't.
Okay, what I can tell you is that a substantial amount of deforestation has taken place. You are going to...
Honorable, my very good friend, you are to ask question. A preamble, but you say what you can tell him.
Thank you, Chairman. That's a substantial amount of deforestation has taken place to the level that if care is not taken, Ghana will be swallowed up by the Sahel. And you go into that ministry, what measures are you going to put in place to grow our forest?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do know that there was a policy of planting trees in this country, I guess by the Minister of... No, the Minister of Lands and Nature. I was surprised that Mesty was not involved in that. And I was surprised also that if you look at the Interministerial Committee on Galamsey, Minister of Environment, Science and Technology is not a member. The reason why Galamsey and the destruction of the environment is an issue because it affects the environment. So if you have a committee that is to see to it that we stem the tide, I think that the Minister of Environment should play the leading role in terms of that. Now, I think we can have every child per tree policy, every child. And you know, children are engaged in competition and they love that. So if you have a policy that every child should have plant a tree and nurture that tree, it is tailored into President Muhammad's vision as captured in the NDC's manifesto, that every man per tree. So I'll take it further. Apart from every man per tree, every child should plant a tree and nurture it. We should also have aspects to look at how we can, you know, work in hand with the Minister of Agric to support farmers to reclaim some of the degraded lands. There are several ways by which people who are engaged in agricultural activities can do that. That is environmental friendly. And these are some of the issues I will be taking up with other ministries such as Minister of Agric.
Mr. Chairman, my second question. You know, I'm coming from the Agric Ministry, and one major problem that farmers face is post-harvest losses. You are going to a ministry where you are going to be in control of science, technology, and all that. What plans do you have to use technology, especially nuclear energy, to preserve agricultural produce so we can reduce these post-harvest losses?
First and foremost, I'll be looking at increasing the funding sources of some of these state institutions. The Ghana, Ghana Atomic Energy, Commission, and you have EPA, you have CSIR. They all have the capacity to come out with new innovative ways by which we can assist to protect our environment. Unfortunately, if you look at budgetary allocation to them, are not encouraging. One, I would insist that we increase budgetary allocations to them. So what I have done, I have had engagement with heads of the various institutions, and I insist that they all present to me a paper determining the challenges they are facing within the agencies, challenges which prevents them, unfortunately, from executing to their fullest capacity, and means by which we can find solutions to them. So that if I am discussing that with the government, I should discuss with the government having something that is concrete. So I think that once we get to, we'll be able to engage various stakeholders. Now, Mr. Chairman, the issue of post-harvest loss, it is not only limited just to the environment. It has something also to do with motorability, access to farmlands. I'm a farmer myself, and I have seen people who engage in small-scale farming, that they can harvest their farm produce, but they find it extremely difficult to cut them to market centers to sell. And they all contribute to the post-harvest loss. How do we work in tandem with Ministry of Roads so that that linkage that ought to exist between ministries is deepened? And I think that these are some of the issues I want to look at. So in as much as I'll look at the aspects of the environment and what we intend to do, I'll look at the aspects of other ministries can do in line with the Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology to reduce this post-harvest loss and increase agricultural yield. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. In your answer, you've given indication that you work in collaboration with other ministries and agencies